There is a woman standing on a beach in November, and her legs do not work the way they should. She has been on a ship for 66 days. Her body no longer trusts stillness. The ground is solid and frozen, and it does not move, and her knees keep bending anyway, bracing for a wave that does not come. That woman is you. You are 17 years old. You are a servant, and you have just arrived at the edge of a continent that will kill half the people standing around you before spring. The ship behind you is the Mayflower. She is 180 tons of converted cargo vessel, 90 feet long, and she has been your world since the 5th of September, 1620. 102 passengers, 30 crew, a space below decks 5 feet high, where you all lived together in the dark for 2 months on biscuit and dried peas. You are not here because you believe in God's calling to the new world. You are here because someone signed a contract on your behalf, 7 years of service in exchange for passage. You did not choose this ship. You did not choose these people. You are cargo of a different kind. Useful cargo, but cargo. The forest ahead of you goes back farther than anything you have ever seen. You cannot see where it ends, and somewhere inside it, people are watching you. 51 of the 102 will be dead before the first flowers come. You will bury them at night, so no one can count the graves. You will smooth the soil flat above them. You will plant things over them later to hide the number. In January, 17 people will die in a single month. In February, you will be one of 6 people healthy enough to care for everyone else. You will carry water to people who cannot stand. You will feed children who do not understand why the food is what it is. You will bank a fire every night in a building with a frozen earth floor and a thatch roof that leaked from the day it was built. And one morning, that roof will be on fire. You will be inside when it happens. The men in charge signed a governing document 46 words long and called it authority. The women were not asked to sign. The servants were not asked at all. You are governed by it nonetheless. There is corn in the ground that does not belong to you, taken from people whose village stood on this exact land 3 years ago, emptied by a disease that moved through the coast and killed 9 in 10. Those people are still here. They are in the tree line. They have been watching since November. And one morning in March, one of them will walk out of the forest and say, in English, "Welcome." You don't know any of this yet. You are standing on a beach, in the cold, in November, and your legs are still waiting for the ship to move. This is quiet history at bedtime. If this is your kind of story, a subscribe means everything right now. Every detail in this story comes from the historical record. Just relax and feel free to let this play as you drift off to sleep. Now, let us begin. You are 17 years old. Your name is Mary. You came aboard the Mayflower at Southampton in August of 1620 as an indentured servant bound to the household of Stephen Hopkins, a man who had already survived one colonial disaster. He was shipwrecked in Bermuda in 1609 while sailing for the Virginia Company and still chose to come back. That is the kind of man Stephen Hopkins is. You did not choose him. Your indenture was arranged by others, and the terms are plain. 7 years of service in exchange for your passage, your food, and whatever life this place turns out to be. You are not a separatist. You do not share the religious convictions of the men who organized this voyage. You are useful, and that is enough for them, and it will have to be enough for you. The Mayflower left Southampton on the 5th of August, 1620, in company with a second vessel called the Speedwell. The Speedwell leaked so badly she had to turn back twice, and so 102 passengers departed from Plymouth, England, on the 6th of September, 1620, aboard a single ship, alone. The Mayflower was approximately 180 tons burden, a cargo vessel, not a passenger ship. She had 3 masts, a length of roughly 90 feet, and a 'tween deck, the space between the main cargo hold and the upper deck, that measured no more than 5 feet from floor to ceiling. This is where you lived for 66 days. Most of the 102 passengers lived here together. You could not stand upright. You could lie down, or sit, or curl against whoever was nearest, and wait. You pick up one end of a wooden chest and begin walking toward the longboat. The other end is held by a hired man whose name you do not know well, and neither of you speaks because there is nothing useful to say and your breath is already going white between you. The chest contains the Hopkins household goods, pewter dishes, tools, seed stock, folded linen, the things a family brings when they are not planning to come back. It weighs exactly as much as it did in Southampton. You have simply learned to expect it. The longboat is 30 feet of open wood, already low in the water from the previous load. You set the chest on the gunwale, and the hired man steadies it while you climb in. Then you pull it the rest of the way. The water between the Mayflower and the shore is gray and choppy and threaded with cold. You know this cold because you touched it once in early November, reaching down from the deck to wet your hand. It was not like river cold in England. It was a deep mineral cold that moved up your wrist and into your forearm before you pulled back. The date is the 11th of November, 1620. You are anchored inside the hook of Cape Cod, in a place the English maps call Provincetown Harbor. This is not where you were supposed to go. The original patent, the legal document granting the separatists the right to settle, was drawn for land in Virginia, far to the south. But the Atlantic in autumn had other plans. Storms pushed the Mayflower north. The captain, Christopher Jones, attempted to turn south in mid-November and met shoals and violent seas near Pollock Rip that nearly wrecked the ship. He turned north again. And so here you are, outside the legal jurisdiction of the Virginia Company, on a coast to which no one aboard has any formal right, in weather that has already turned. The longboat grinds onto the gravel beach, and the men jump out and pull it up, and you step out after them onto what is technically, legally, and in every practical sense, a new world. The gravel shifts under your boots. The cold comes off the water behind you. The cold comes out of the trees ahead of you. Between them, standing in it, you are the filling of something that has not yet decided what it is. The Hopkins children are already on shore. Giles and Constance and Damaris, who is still small enough to be carried. Elizabeth Hopkins, the wife, is 31 years old, and she is recovering. She delivered a son aboard the Mayflower 2 weeks ago in Provincetown Harbor, a boy named Oceanus. He is alive. She is alive. You carry things, and Elizabeth Hopkins manages the children, and Stephen Hopkins walks ahead toward the tree line with 2 other men to look at the timber. The timber here is extraordinary by English standards. England by 1620 has been nearly deforested. Centuries of clearing for charcoal, for shipbuilding, for fuel, for farms. What you are looking at now, these dense stands of oak and pine running back from the shore in every direction, is what England looked like 500 years ago. You do not know this. You know only that the trees are tall and close, and that the men keep saying things to each other about what could be built. You set down your load near the high water mark and go back for another. The longboat makes 4 trips before the afternoon light starts to go. In November at this latitude, just above 42 degrees north, the sun sets before 4 o'clock and the sky turns gray before that. You learn this on the first day. You will remember it all winter. Tonight you sleep aboard the Mayflower again. Most passengers will sleep aboard for weeks. The ship is not comfortable. It smells of bilge water and unwashed bodies, and the livestock penned on the gun deck, but it is enclosed, and enclosed means warmer than the shore. The 'tween-deck temperature at night sits just above freezing as long as people are in it. People are in it. You are given ship's biscuit for supper and a small amount of dried peas boiled in water. The ship's stores are lower than they should be. The Mayflower's provisions were calculated for a 60-day crossing, and it took 66. 6 days is not nothing when you are dividing food among 102 passengers and 30-odd crew. Your portion tonight is the portion of a servant. It fits in the hollow of one hand. You lie down in your usual place in the 'tween-deck, your back against the hull planking, your knees drawn up. The woman next to you is coughing. She has been coughing since mid-Atlantic, and tonight her cough wakes you, and you lie in the dark listening to the water against the hull. You pull your blanket up. It is a single wool blanket, heavy with salt damp, a blanket of this quality. 1 yard of woolen broadcloth, coarse grade, would have cost 8 to 12 pence in England. You did not buy it. It was issued to you as part of your indenture. You have 2 of them. You are sleeping under both. The temperature on the ship tonight is perhaps 3 or 4 degrees above freezing. You know this not from a thermometer, but from the way the water in the wooden cup near your head has a skim of ice on it by morning. November in Massachusetts is not November in England. In England, the Thames freezes perhaps once a decade. Here, the inland rivers freeze every year, and the bay will have ice in its shallows by January. You don't know this yet. You are still learning the rules of this place. There are 31 children aboard the Mayflower, 14 of them under 12. You look after Damaris Hopkins, who is 3, and her infant brother Oceanus, who is 3 weeks old and surprisingly loud for his size. Elizabeth Hopkins tires easily, and you take the infant when she needs to sleep. You are sometimes sitting in the half-dark with a 3-week-old baby while the ship rocks and the November wind comes off the Atlantic, and you think about nothing in particular, because thinking about particular things is a luxury for people with more certainty than you have. The separatists, the saints as they call themselves, spent the 11th of November doing something you were not part of. While you carried boxes, 41 adult male passengers gathered in the great cabin at the stern and signed a document. The document is 46 words long. It establishes a civil body politic, a governing compact, self-authorized, with no reference to any English legal structure, because they are no longer within any English legal structure. It will later be known as the Mayflower Compact. You did not sign it. Women do not sign it. Servants do not sign it. You are governed by it nonetheless. On the 18th of November, a woman named Dorothy Bradford goes overboard. She is the wife of William Bradford, who will become the colony's most important governor and chronicler. She goes overboard from the anchored ship in Provincetown Harbor and drowns. The accounts do not agree on how it happens. Some say accident, some say nothing at all. You were asleep when it happened. You heard about it in the morning. You did not know her well. In the 'tween deck, with 100 people in it, you knew everyone's cough and no one's thoughts. There are 3 scouting expeditions from Provincetown in November and December, going further each time, searching for a place to build. You do not go on any of them. Your job is the Hopkins household, and the Hopkins household is on the ship. The first expedition finds cleared fields, native cornfields, harvested and empty, and storehouses of corn still in the ground. 50 or so bushels, seed corn in clay pots and woven baskets. They take it. They discuss briefly whether this is stealing, and decide they will pay for it later when they have something to pay with. They do not pay for it later. The corn keeps some of them alive through the winter. The third expedition, 18 men in the shallop the ship's carpenter spent 2 weeks reassembling, goes out in December. They are caught in a violent storm. The rudder breaks. A squall hits at night, and the mast splits into 3 pieces, and the sail falls over them, and men are grabbing at it in the dark. They make the shore of a small island in the harbor, build a fire, and wait out the night. In the morning, the harbor around them is good, deep enough for the Mayflower, protected from the open sea, with fresh water and cleared land along the shore. They come back, and the decision is made. Plymouth. You hear the name on the 13th of December. Plymouth. Named for the English port they left from, named for the River Plym, which runs brown and cold into Plymouth Sound. You have been to Plymouth. You walked the quay there while the Mayflower was provisioning and watched the gulls working the fish market. And you did not know yet that this would be the last English town you would see for the rest of your life. The Mayflower moves to Plymouth Harbor on the 16th of December, 1620. The separatists do not work on Sunday, so the 25th of December is a working day, the first axes going into the trees at Plymouth in the cold on Christmas morning. You are on the Mayflower. You are keeping Oceaness Hopkins from crying. Outside you can hear the axes. The settlement as planned is small, 19 families and several single men. A single street running up a hill from the shore, family lots on either side. At the top, a cannon platform for a 6-pound culverin. The common house, 20 feet by 20 feet, built first to store supplies and shelter the sick. Then the family houses. Then, eventually, whatever comes after that. You help build the common house, not with an axe, but with your hands, carrying, smoothing, tamping frozen earth. In England, a cold winter day is 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Here, in late December at Plymouth, it can be 15 or less, and the wind off the bay adds to it. Your fingers go numb within minutes. You have learned to warm them under your arms before the feeling goes entirely. By the 28th of December, the frame is standing. By the 1st of January, the walls are up. By the first week of January, there is a roof, thatch cut from the marsh grass along the shore, and the common house is technically complete. It leaks in rain. It lets the wind through the gaps in the walls, but it is enclosed, and enclosed means something. The first night you sleep on land is the 4th of January, 1621. You sleep on the floor of the common house with 20 other people, on a pallet of cut grass and 2 wool blankets, and the floor is frozen earth beneath you, and the fire in the center of the room eats wood at a rate that frightens you when you think about how much is left in the pile. You do not sleep well, but you sleep. Outside, the bay is black, and the Mayflower rides at anchor in the dark. The winter of 1620 is not finished with you yet. It has barely started. January comes in hard. You learn this not from a calendar, but from your body. The cold that settled over Plymouth in late December was a particular cold. Dry, sharp, the kind that makes the air feel thin. January is different. January is wet, and the wet is worse. The wind off the bay carries moisture, and the moisture goes through wool, as if wool is not there. You stop being surprised by this after the 3rd day, and start being afraid of it instead, which is more useful. You are carrying water from the spring on the hillside down to the common house. The spring is 50 yards from the building, and the path between them has frozen into a series of hard ridges where boots have broken the mud, and the mud has refrozen in the shape of boots. You have to watch where you place your feet every step of the way, or the bucket swings, and you lose half of what you are carrying. You have done this walk 6 times today. You will do it 2 more times before dark. The common house is full of the sick. This is January 1621, and you are in the middle of what the colonists will later call the general sickness, though they will not use that name until it is over and there is something to name. Right now it has no name. It is simply the fact of the place, that people are dying, have been dying, and will continue dying. There is not much to be done about it, except to keep the fire going, and to bring water, and to not, yourself, get sick. That last part is not entirely within your control. The disease is not one thing, it is many things. Pneumonia, scurvy, what they call consumption, complications from the crossing that have waited until now to become fatal. The ship's surgeon, Samuel Fuller, has some medical training but is not a physician in the formal sense. What he can do is limited. There are no hospitals anywhere near Plymouth, Massachusetts. In January of 1621, there is the common house, and there is the cold floor, and there is the fire, and there is you, carrying water. You set the bucket down near the door and lift the latch and push inside, and the smell hits you the way it always does. Smoke, unwashed bodies, the sour sweetness of people who cannot get up to relieve themselves. There are 11 people in here right now who cannot walk. 3 of them have been unable to walk for more than a week. 2 of the 3 will be dead by the end of this month. You do not know this yet. You know only that they are here and that they need water and that you are the one bringing it. The fire in the center of the common house needs constant feeding. Oak burns well, but it burns fast in an open fire with a draft running through the building, and the thatch is not properly sealed at the ridge, so the smoke never quite draws the way it should. Some of it escapes up through the roof. The rest settles in the room at chest height and below. You have learned to move through the common house in a slight crouch, your face at the level where the smoke thins. The people lying on the floor breathe cleaner air than you do standing up. This is one of the small, useless ironies of the place. You ladle water into a wooden cup and bring it to the man nearest the fire. His name is William White. He is 25 years old. He was a wool carder. a man who prepared raw fleece for spinning, from Leiden in the Netherlands, before all of this. His wife Susanna is here too, on the other side of the room, and she is sick also, though not as sick as he is. They have an infant son named Peregrine, born aboard the Mayflower in Provincetown Harbor in November, who is so far healthy in the inexplicable way that infants sometimes survive what adults cannot. You have held Peregrine. He is heavier than he looks, packed into his swaddling like something that intends to stay. William White will die on the 11th of February. You do not know this. You know only that he is here, and his wife is here, and the water is cold, and the fire is low, and you need more wood. You go back outside for wood. The wood pile is 20 feet from the common house door, stacked in a rough cord, 4 feet high by 4 feet wide by 8 feet long, 128 cubic feet of split oak and pine. This pile is not a full cord. It is less than a full cord, and it is January, and you will need considerably more than a cord to get through the winter. The men who are well enough are cutting in the forest. Not many men are well enough. Of the 102 passengers who crossed on the Mayflower, approximately half will die before spring. The dying is not evenly distributed across time. It peaks in February, when 17 people will die in a single month, the worst of all the months. December sees 6 deaths. January sees 8. February sees 17. March sees 13. Then it stops. The total dead among the passengers by spring is 51 people. The Mayflower's crew also sickens. The sailors, who had shown contempt for the colonists throughout the crossing, who had said openly that they hoped the landlubbers would die because they were tired of them, they begin dying too, and by spring roughly half the crew is dead. Captain Jones loses his ship's master, his boatswain, his cook, his gunner, and 3 quartermasters over the winter. The Mayflower does not leave Plymouth Harbor until the 5th of April, 1621, because too many of the crew are too sick to sail her. You do not know any of these numbers yet. You are in January. You are carrying wood. The wood is heavier than you want it to be. You carry 3 pieces at a time, stacked against your chest, your chin resting on the top piece to keep them from sliding. Pine burns hotter but faster. You have learned to mix the pine with the oak to make the fire last longer through the night. You bring the wood inside and rebuild the fire, setting the pieces in the way that draws the heat downward rather than straight up through the thatch. The smoke shifts and thickens, and then clears slightly as the new wood catches and the draft finds its direction. The sick people near the fire turn their faces toward the warmth without waking. There is a specific kind of cold that lives inside a building in January in Massachusetts. It is not the cold of the outdoors. That cold is honest, at least it announces itself, and you can prepare for it. The cold inside the common house is the cold that has gotten through everything, through the walls, through the thatch, through your wool, through your skin, and settled somewhere near the center of you, in the place where warmth is supposed to live. You do not notice it arriving. You notice it when it is already there, when you reach for something and your fingers do not quite close the way you expected them to, when you stand up too fast and the blood moves too slowly to keep up. The only answer is the fire, but the fire requires wood, and wood requires going outside. You go outside. The cold hits the front of your face like something solid, not wind. There is no wind right now. which almost makes it worse because wind at least moves, at least changes. This is just air at a temperature that should not be survivable, sitting perfectly still, waiting for you to come out into it. Your nose runs immediately, your eyes water, and the water nearly freezes at the corners. You breathe through your mouth, and the cold goes straight down into your lungs and sits there. You pick up the wood and go back inside. You do this because there is nothing else to do. William Bradford writes about this later in his History of Plymouth Plantation, the most detailed account of this winter that exists. He names specifically two men: Miles Standish, the colony's military captain, a professional soldier from Lancashire who came over not as a separatist but as a hired defender, and William Brewster, the separatist elder, 60 years old, healthy throughout the winter in the way that some old men are inexplicably healthy when younger men are not. These two, Bradford writes, spared no pains night or day, fetching wood, making fires, washing their loathsome clothes, cooking, making beds, all the physical work of care. You are doing this work too. Bradford does not write about you. You are a servant. Servants are the medium through which this work passes, invisible and necessary. The Hopkins children need to be fed. Elizabeth Hopkins is recovering from the birth of Oceanus, but she is not well enough to manage everything herself, and so you handle the meal preparation each evening. The food stores from the Mayflower are being drawn down. The corn taken from the native storehouses at Provincetown, approximately 50 bushels in clay pots and woven baskets, a type of flint corn grown by coastal Wampanoag communities for generations, is being consumed carefully. There are dried peas, salt pork in a barrel that is almost empty, hard biscuit that must be soaked before it can be chewed without breaking a tooth. You make a stew of peas and salt pork and water, seasoned with nothing because there is nothing to season with, and serve it in wooden bowls. The portions are specific. The colony's governing structure established food rationing early. Each person's daily allowance is measured and accounted for. A healthy adult receives approximately 1 biscuit and a small measure of peas per meal. Servants receive the same as other adults. You had expected less, but in a rationing system there is no efficiency and gradation below the minimum, and the minimum here is already very close to the bottom. Damaris Hopkins is 3 years old, and she stands in doorways with her arms crossed and her feet planted in a way that reminds you of her father. She does not understand why the food is what it is and not something better. You do not explain rationing to a 3-year-old. You give her the stew and you tell her it is good. Tonight she eats it. Outside the cleared ground of the settlement, the land is someone else's recent memory. The Wampanoag Confederacy, a collection of related tribes under the Sachem Massasoit, whose territory covers most of southern New England, cleared this specific land and planted it and harvested it for generations. The village that stood here was called Patuxent. It was emptied between 1616 and 1619 by a catastrophic epidemic, possibly leptospirosis, possibly hepatitis A, possibly a combination of diseases arriving from earlier European contact, that swept through the coastal Wampanoag communities and killed between 70 and 90% of the population in some areas. The Wampanoag remember this. They know exactly how recently this land was inhabited. They are watching the Plymouth colonists from the forest. They have been watching since November. You know this imperfectly, at second hand, from conversations you were not included in. The men talk about signs in the trees, movements at the tree line. One evening in January, you are bringing in the last load of wood before the light goes entirely, and you stop at the edge of the clearing and look into the trees. You think you see a shape, upright, too still to be an animal, watching from the dark. You pick up the wood and go inside and say nothing. You are not asked. The sickness takes separatists and the people like you, the hired workers, the servants, the ones who came for practical reasons rather than theological ones, with equal indifference. In January, among the dead, there are both kinds. The burials happen at night. You hear the men explain this to each other. They bury at night so that the Wampanoag cannot count the graves and learn how many have died. A healthy colony and a colony that has lost half its people are different propositions strategically. They smooth the ground over the graves. The hill where the cannon platform will eventually be built, Cole's Hill, it is later called, has bodies under it by the end of January. You walk over that ground every day on your way to the spring. Your feet know it. You try not to let yourself know that they know it. The common house catches fire on the 14th of January. You are inside when it happens. The thatch on the roof is dry inside even when the outside is damp, because the constant fire has been drawing moisture out of it for weeks. A spark goes up through the smoke hole, catches, and the smoke shifts from gray to black in seconds. Someone shouts. You grab the nearest child, a boy of 4 or 5, sleeping near the fire, not one of the Hopkins children, and you go through the door with him under your arm and into the cold. The roof burns for 20 minutes. The walls, being green timber, do not catch. Several sick men inside cannot be moved, and they remain while the roof burns above them, protected by the men who stand over them with cloaks and blankets, beating out sparks. A barrel of black powder for the muskets is stored against the far wall. It does not ignite. This is what everyone talks about afterward. The near catastrophe that wasn't. The fire is extinguished by rain that starts almost precisely as the roof is consumed. A cold January rain that has been holding off all morning and chose this moment to arrive. You stand in the rain with the boy under your arm and look at the smoke coming from the gutted roof. He is not crying. He is watching the smoke with the fixed attention that looks, in a child that age, almost like calm. It is not calm. It is the expression that comes when nothing available is adequate for what is happening. You bring him into the nearest standing family house and set him near the hearth and find a blanket and go back out. The common house will need a new roof. The men who are well enough will build it. But tonight the sick must be distributed among the family houses that have room. The Hopkins house has room because it is larger than most, and so by nightfall there are 2 additional pallets on the Hopkins floor and 2 additional people breathing in the dark. The rain is coming through the gaps in the walls in thin horizontal threads. You lie on your back listening to it. January is 42 days long. You know this is arithmetically wrong, but this is how it sits in your body. 42 days of identical cold and water carrying and fire feeding and stew making and watching people thin down into something less than themselves. By the time February begins, you have stopped counting and started simply living inside the day that is in front of you. This is the only approach that works. Yesterday is a debt you cannot pay. Tomorrow is a country you are not sure exists. There is this, the fire, the water, the bowl, the blanket. the child asking why again. The morning of the 7th of January is the morning you find that you cannot feel your left foot. You have slept on the floor, and your foot was not under the blanket, and the floor is frozen earth. By morning, the foot has gone past cold into something else, a dense wooden numbness that does not hurt but should hurt. You know from the men's conversations that this is the thing to be afraid of, the absence of pain where pain should be. You sit up in the gray pre-dawn light and rub the foot hard between your palms for several minutes, slowly, unevenly. Feeling returns in the way that feeling returns from cold. First pins, then fire, then ordinary pain. Ordinary pain means the blood is moving again. You are wearing all the clothing you own, a linen shift, a wool petticoat, a second wool petticoat on top of that, a bodice that laces in the front, wool stockings, leather shoes with buckles, and a coif on your head, a close-fitting linen cap that covers your ears and ties under your chin. The coif is the most important thing. Heat escapes the body primarily through the head, and you have learned this practically. The one morning you left the coif off because it needed washing, you were cold within 20 minutes in a room that was otherwise bearable. You have not made that mistake again. The linen under your wool is wet by morning. This is not from washing. You have not bathed properly since England, and no one in the colony has, because bathing in cold water in January is a category of discomfort that tips into danger. The wetness comes from your body itself, from the modest warmth your sleeping generates. It makes the morning air bite harder when you stand up and the linen pulls cold against your skin. You move quickly to the fire, which you left banked, and add wood, and kneel close to the new flame while your clothes warm against your body. The pins and needles in your foot fade into ordinary cold. Ordinary cold is manageable. Stephen Hopkins is already up. He is sitting at the small table in the corner with a piece of paper and a piece of charcoal, writing something in columns. He is doing an accounting, an inventory of what the household possesses, what it has consumed, and what remains. He does not show it to you. You are not part of the accounting, but you can tell from the way his mouth moves slightly when he works the columns that the numbers are not going in a good direction. The Hopkins household came over with more than most. The household inventory included 1 barrel of beer, 2 barrels of meal, 2 firkins of butter, 1 firkin of cheese, half a firkin of lard, 1 barrel of oatmeal, a bag of salt, 1 bag of pepper and spice, 12 pounds of sugar, a small barrel of salted fish, lead and shot for muskets, and tools, a saw, hammer, nails, a hoe, a spade. The Virginia Company had published recommended provisions lists for intending settlers: 300 pounds of biscuit, 1 firkin of butter, half a bushel of oatmeal per person per month of voyage, plus additional stores for the first year of settlement. The Hopkins provisions meet this standard. They have lasted longer than some, but they are not lasting forever. And Stephen Hopkins's accounting is the daily record of how much longer they have. You make the morning porridge from oats and water. There is a small amount of salt to put in it, and no sweetener remaining. Damaris eats it without complaint today, which is not always the case. Oceanus Hopkins, the infant born at sea, is 6 weeks old and takes his mother's milk and nothing else. His nutrition is whatever Elizabeth can provide from a body depleted by the crossing and the weeks of poor eating. He is smaller than Peregrine White was at the same age. You do not know if this is normal variation or something to worry about. There is no one to ask who knows more than you do. You take a bowl of the porridge to the common house for the sick. The walk there is 4 minutes in normal conditions. This morning, with ice on the path, it takes 8. You go carefully. The bowl must not tip. The sick people cannot come to the food. The food must come to them. Inside, the rebuilt section of roof, thatch over new poles, laid 3 days ago by the men who were well enough, lets in less cold than the original did because the new thatch is thicker, tamped down with more care. A good thatch roof, properly layered, should be 12 to 18 inches deep at the eave and taper toward the ridge, with each course of thatch overlapping the one below it by at least a third. A well-laid thatch will shed water and hold warmth. The original roof was laid in a hurry in December by men who were learning the technique as they went. This one is better. You ladle porridge into the cups of the people who can hold cups. For the ones who cannot hold cups, you use a spoon, small amounts at a time, tilting it carefully. This is slower than everything else you do. You do not rush it. There is nothing to rush toward. The man who has been the sickest for the longest, he arrived in the common house on the 28th of December and has not left since, is a separatist from Leiden named Edward Fuller. He is 36 years old. His wife is also sick, in the house further up the street. His son Samuel is 8 years old and is not sick, and has been spending his days in the common house, not because he is required to, but because this is where his father is, and the boy will not leave his father. He sits near Edward Fuller's pallet and does whatever small tasks he can find. He keeps the fire fed when you are not there. He refills the water bucket. He talks to his father in a low voice when his father is awake. You have watched Samuel Fuller for 2 weeks. He is 8 years old, and he is doing what you are doing in miniature, with a focused competence that does not belong to his age, and that the situation has produced in him the way that cold produces certain crystals, out of pressure and necessity, in forms that were always latent in the material. Edward Fuller will die on the 2nd of February. His wife Anne will die shortly after. Samuel will be taken in by other families in the colony, will live to adulthood, and will become a deacon of the Plymouth church. These things have not happened yet. Right now he is 8 years old, and he is keeping the fire. You hand him the porridge bowl when you are finished with the rounds, and he takes it without being asked and carries it to the door. He knows where the bowl goes. He has been watching you long enough to know where everything goes. Outside, the day has come up gray and flat, the sky the color of wet wool from horizon to horizon. The bay beyond the settlement is the same color as the sky, the line between them nearly invisible. The Mayflower is there in the gray, her spars bare. 2 of her sailors came ashore yesterday to get water and said nothing about when the ship would leave. The captain's plan, as far as anyone knows, is to winter over and leave in spring. He has no choice. The crew is sick and the weather is not navigable. The Mayflower is not going anywhere in January. You stand for a moment between the common house and the Hopkins lot and look at the bay and breathe. The air is so cold it hurts the back of your throat on the inhale. A thin ache, not quite pain. You breathe it anyway. Cold air, however it feels, is better than the air inside the common house right now. The settlement street is quiet in the morning. You pass John Billington's house, where a dog tied to a post watches you with small yellow eyes. You pass the Alden house, John Alden, the barrel maker, 21 years old, healthy and busy. carrying timber from the edge of the cleared ground toward a stack near his lot. He nods at you as you pass. You nod back. This is one of the fuller social exchanges available to you in a day. The hired man is worse. You know this when you get back to the Hopkins house and find him lying on his pallet with his eyes open and his breathing fast and shallow. The kind of breathing that tries to stay on top of something heavy pressing down from inside. His eyes don't track quite right when you move across his field of vision. You have seen this before, not here. In England, a childhood memory of a neighbor who got sick this way. You know what this progression tends toward. You tell Elizabeth Hopkins. She sends Giles, the oldest boy, to find Samuel Fuller, the elder, the ship's surgeon, and ask him to come when he can. Fuller is the only medical presence in the colony, and he is stretched across 100 sick people with a medicine chest that contains dried herbs, rosewater, aquavitae for fever, oil of spike for pain, turpentine for wound dressing, and a set of instruments. This is the standard equipment of a 17th century English apothecary. It is not sufficient for what is happening here, but it is what exists. Fuller moves between the sick with it as fast as a single person can move. He comes in the afternoon. He looks at the hired man, feels his forehead, listens to his chest by pressing his ear against it, and stands up with his hands at his sides. He says to you, not unkindly, that the man needs warmth and water and rest, and that you are already providing all three. Then he leaves. This is all that medicine can offer in January 1621. He knows it. You know it. You do not say this out loud because it would not help either of you. The afternoon light goes by 3 o'clock. The room is lit by fire and by a single tallow candle, made from the rendered fat of cattle brought over from England, of which there are a limited number remaining. You use the candle only when you must see something specific. Otherwise, you move by firelight, which is sufficient for most of what needs doing. You sit near the fire after the children are asleep and mend a tear in Damaris's wool petticoat with a bone needle and linen thread. The firelight is uneven, and you have to hold the work close to your face to see the stitches. The petticoat is the same one she arrived with. It is starting to look like a thing that has been mended several times, which is what it is. You pull the thread through carefully and knot it and bite the excess. The thread tastes of salt. Everything tastes of salt here. Outside, the wind has picked up off the bay. You can hear it moving through the thatch above, finding the places where the thatch is thin, pressing in. The fire responds to it, guttering sideways, then recovering. You draw the ash forward over the coals when the last log burns down. Not so much ash that the coals are smothered, enough that they hold their heat through the night. Banking a fire correctly extends your embers by 6 hours. 6 hours is the difference between a fire in the morning and starting from nothing in the cold, which takes flint and steel and char cloth and patience you do not always have in the pre-dawn dark. The days are getting longer. Not much, barely perceptible, but you have noticed it because you live by the light and you know exactly when it fails. And lately it has been failing slightly later than it did 2 weeks ago. This is not spring. Spring is not coming for months. But the mechanism that lengthens the days does not consult the cold, or the graves on Coles Hill, or the shrinking barrel of salt pork. It lengthens them anyway, 1 minute at a time, with the patience of something that has been doing this for a very long time. The bay at the end of the day is dark and still. The Mayflower rides at anchor in it, a lantern at her stern. You have not been aboard in 2 weeks. She is still there. She is not leaving. February is the worst month. You will learn this in 9 days. You fold the petticoat, you blow out the candle, you bank the fire, and lie down on the floor of the Hopkins house. The colony breathes around you in the dark. The sick and the sleeping and the well and the almost well and the ones who will not be well again, all of them breathing the same cold air under the same roof. Outside, the wind moves through the trees. The trees move against each other. The bay is cold and the graves are cold and the night is long. You are still here. You close your eyes. February arrives without announcement. There is no moment where January becomes February. There is only the cold and the sick, and the morning you realize that the man on the pallet in the corner has not moved since yesterday, and you go to him and find that he is gone. And outside the bay is the same gray it was yesterday, and the trees are the same dark, and the world does not mark the occasion at all. His name was John Goodman. He was 25 years old. He came over as a single man, without family, attached to no particular household. He is the 3rd person to die in the last 6 days. You wrap him in his blanket. It is the only thing available to wrap a person in, and you wait for the men who are still well enough to come and carry him out. They will bury him tonight. They always bury at night now. February 1621 is the month that kills the most people, 17 in 30 days, more than in December and January combined. The colony began with 102 passengers. By the time March arrives, there will be 51 left. You are doing the arithmetic in your head even though you do not want to, because the arithmetic is simply there, present in every meal you serve, and every pallet you pass that is now empty. Half of everyone who stepped off the Mayflower. You carry the water bucket to the spring in the morning, and you count the houses on the street as you pass them. Some of them are empty now. Some of them have been consolidated, 2 families living in one structure because neither family has enough people left to fill their own. The settlement street that was planned for 19 families is being rearranged around the fact of who remains. The spring is iced over at the edges this morning. You break through with the heel of your boot and fill the bucket in the center where the water still moves. The water is so cold it feels like something with weight to it, something that pushes back. You carry it back down the hill with both hands, placing each foot carefully on the frozen path. The sick in the common house have changed composition again. Some who were sick are dead. Some who were well are now sick. The disease moves through the settlement in a pattern you cannot fully predict, taking some quickly and leaving others alone, and there is no logic to it that you can see. William Bradford, who lost his wife in November, is sick himself now. He has been sick for 2 weeks. He will survive. He will survive everything, and live to govern this colony for 30 years and write its history. But you do not know this. You know only that he is here and that he needs water. You ladle it into his cup, and he takes it with both hands, the way all sick people take things. As if the cup might escape, he says thank you in a voice that is lower than his usual voice. You nod and move to the next pallet. Miles Standish moves through the common house behind you, checking the fire, adjusting blankets, speaking briefly to the people who are conscious. He is 36 years old, and he has not been sick, not once, not a cough, not a fever, through the entire winter. and you have noticed that people speak to him with a particular quality of attention, a gratitude that is almost devotion, because he is healthy in a room where health has become the rarest thing. He does not seem to notice this. He checks the fire and he adjusts the blankets and he moves on. His wife, Rose Standish, died on the 29th of January. He was with her when it happened. You were not in the room. You heard about it the next morning, and you watched him come out of the house he had shared with her and walk to the common house and begin working, and he has not stopped working since. This is the only thing available to him, and he knows it, and you understand it, because it is the same thing available to you. You work. You keep working. That is the shape of surviving. The food situation in February is worse than January. The Mayflower's provisions are nearly gone. The flint corn from the Provincetown caches is being stretched as far as it will go, rationed at quantities that keep bodies alive but do not satisfy them. An adult working in cold weather needs approximately 2,500 to 3,000 calories per day to maintain body weight. What the colonists are eating provides perhaps a third of that on good days. You feel this in your body as a constant low-level urgency, a background noise that does not go away. You have learned to ignore it with moderate success. The children feel it differently. Damaris Hopkins has been crying more than usual in the evenings, a thin, tired crying that is not dramatic. She is too depleted for dramatic, but that sits in the room like a presence. You give her your biscuit at supper. You tell yourself you are not hungry. This is not entirely true, but it is useful. Stephen Hopkins watches you do this and says nothing. He is one of the men still well enough to work, and he works from first light until the dark makes it impossible, cutting wood, helping with the sick, managing whatever the day requires. He comes home at night with ice in his beard and sits at the table and eats his portion and says very little. He is not a warm man in the ordinary sense of warmth, but he is present, and in February at Plymouth, presence is its own form of warmth. The construction of individual family houses continues on the days when the men are well enough and the weather permits. By the first week of February, 7 houses have been completed along the settlement street out of the 19 planned. This is the structure of the colony in February. 7 houses, a common house being used as a hospital, a platform for the cannon on the hill above, and 51 people where there should be 102. Each house is roughly 14 feet by 18 feet, a single room with a sleeping loft in some of them. The walls are timber framed with wattle and daub, thin branches woven between upright posts and plastered with a mixture of clay, straw, and animal dung. The wattle and daub does not stop the cold, it slows it. In a Massachusetts February, slowing the cold is the best available option. What the cold does to a body over weeks is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It works slowly, the way water works on stone, not breaking anything, just wearing. You notice it in the way your hands have lost some of their precision. A button that would have taken 2 seconds to fasten in October takes 10 seconds in February, your fingers moving with a deliberateness that feels borrowed from someone older. You notice it in the way the children have stopped running. Damaris Hopkins, who was never still in October, moves carefully now, conserving something she does not have a name for. You notice it in the mornings, when the first thing you feel before you are fully awake is not rested. It is cold. The cold is always first. The cold is there before you are. Some mornings, the inside of the wall nearest your palate has a skim of ice on it, not thick, a film. the moisture of the room's breath having reached the wall and frozen there. You run your finger along it when you wake, and it is gone in seconds. Your body heat enough to dissolve it. Your body heat is enough to dissolve ice on a wall. Your body is warm. You are alive. This is not a small thing, and some mornings you lie still for a moment and simply take account of it. You sleep in the loft with the children in the coldest weeks. Body warmth from 4 people in an enclosed space raises the temperature by several degrees, enough to make the difference between sleeping and lying awake shivering. Giles Hopkins is 13, and he has the particular dignity of a boy who has decided to act like a man before he is one. He does not complain about sharing the loft. He pulls his blanket up and turns toward the wall and sleeps, or pretends to sleep, which produces the same warmth. On the 9th of February, a man named William Mullins dies. He is 50 years old, a shoemaker from Dorking in Surrey, one of the strangers, the non-separatists who came over for practical reasons. He came with his wife and 2 of his children, and his inventory included 126 pairs of shoes and 13 pairs of boots, which he planned to sell in the new colony. The shoes are in a chest in the house he shared with his family. His daughter Priscilla is alive, 19 years old, and she will outlive almost everyone from this crossing. His wife Alice dies a few days after he does. You know Priscilla slightly. You have exchanged words at the water spring, practical words about the path and the ice and nothing of consequence. She is a composed person, careful with her face in the way that people become careful when they have learned that losing composure costs something they cannot afford. After her father dies, you see her outside his house in the cold, standing very still, looking at the bay. You walk past her. You do not say anything because there is nothing to say, and she knows it, and you know it, and the bay does not care, and the cold does not care, and sometimes the only honest thing is silence. You carry a load of wood past her and go inside. Behind you the door closes. In front of you the fire needs feeding. The burials continue at night. The men who are well enough take the bodies up to Coles Hill above the settlement, where the ground is softer than at the shore, softer only relative to frozen ground elsewhere, and still requiring real effort to break. They dig shallow graves because deep graves are not possible in this cold. They smooth the surface after. They do not mark the graves with stones or crosses because marked graves can be counted. Later, when the ground thaws, some of the graves will be marked. But right now the hill holds its dead quietly, in the dark, and in the morning you walk past it on your way to the spring and the hill looks like a hill. There is a moment in the middle of February when you are alone in the common house at midday. Everyone who can be moved has been moved to family houses to make room, and the people who remain are the ones too sick to be moved. And you are sitting near the fire with a cup of water going warm in your hands, and the light through the smoke hole is actually genuinely slightly brighter than it was a month ago. Just slightly. The angle of it is different. The sun is climbing again, degree by degree, and the light coming into this building is not the low, flat, gray light of December, but something that has a direction to it. You sit with the warm cup and look at the light. You do not feel hope, exactly. You feel something adjacent to it, a recognition, maybe, that the planet is still doing what the planet does, regardless of everything else. The days are getting longer. The light is coming back. The sick man nearest the fire opens his eyes and looks at the smoke hole, and then closes them again. He is a separatist named Thomas Tinker. He is a woodworker by trade. He will die on the 21st of February. His wife and son died before him, and you will be in this room when it happens, and you will wrap him in his blanket, the same way you wrapped John Goodman, and the men will come and carry him out, and the night will be cold and dark, and the graves on Coles Hill will receive him. But right now he is looking at the smoke hole, and the light is coming through it at a different angle than it did in December. And you sit with the warm cup and let yourself notice this, because it costs nothing and gives something. And in February at Plymouth you take what gives something and you hold it. The hired man who was sick, the one whose breathing changed in January, the one Fuller came to see and could not help. He died on the 15th of February. You were not with him at the end. You were at the spring. When you came back, he was gone, and someone had already wrapped him. You stood in the doorway of the Hopkins house and looked at the empty pallet, and then you picked up the blanket that was next to it and folded it and put it on the shelf. You have learned to fold things after. Folding the blanket is a way of saying that the space is still a space, that the work continues, that the morning will require the same things the morning always requires. You fold the blanket, and then you go and start the supper. The colony's governing structure holds through all of this. Governor Carver is still functioning. He is healthy, one of the lucky ones, though he will not remain lucky. Edward Winslow, who will become one of the colony's most important diplomats, is healthy and active throughout the winter. William Brewster, 60 years old, continues his rounds of the sick as he has since November. The Mayflower Compact, the 46-word governing document signed in November, remains the only legal authority in the settlement. Under it, decisions are made collectively among the adult male members of the colony. You are not among them. You hear the decisions afterward, when they affect what you do, which is most decisions. The decision in mid-February is to reorganize the lots on the settlement street to account for the dead. Households that have lost members are combined. Single men, there are fewer of them now, are distributed among the remaining family houses. This is a practical arrangement made without ceremony, and it reshuffles who you sleep near and who you cook for without anyone asking whether this suits you. You adapt. Adapting is the only available response to most things here. By the last week of February, the dying is slowing. Not because the disease has finished, it has not finished, but because it has taken a large portion of what it came for, and the people remaining are the ones whose bodies held. You do not know this at the time. You notice only that fewer mornings begin with a pallet that was occupied when you slept and empty when you woke. You notice that the common house has room in it for the first time in 2 months. You notice that when you look around the settlement street, you can see most of the people who are left, all at once, without turning your head very far. And you count them because you cannot help counting them, and the number is small. It is the last day of February. The light is better. The cold is the same. March will not be warm, not here, not for a long time, but the light is better, and the dying is slowing. And somewhere in the forest, things you cannot see are beginning to move that will change everything. You bank the fire in the Hopkins house. You fold the blankets. You lie down. The night is cold, and the bay is cold, and the hill above the settlement is cold. Beneath your feet, beneath the frozen ground, the seeds the Wampanoag planted here for generations are still in the soil. March is coming. You do not know yet what March will bring. You close your eyes and let it come. The morning of the 3rd of March begins the same as every morning before it. Gray light through the thatch, the fire low, the cold floor under your feet when you stand. You add wood to the fire and watch the flame come back up and put your hands close to it. Your hands have changed over the winter. The skin on your knuckles has cracked and healed and cracked again. And there are places along the edges of your fingers where the skin is thickened and rough in a way it was not in England. Your hands are not 17-year-old hands anymore. They are the hands of the work they have done. You make porridge. You bring water. You check the sick, of whom there are fewer now. 4 people in the common house this morning, down from 11 in January. 4 is still 4 people who cannot care for themselves. But 4 is a different number than 11, and the difference lives in your body as a slight loosening, a breath that goes a little deeper than it did last month. Outside, the morning is clear. Clear mornings in March at Plymouth are cold and brilliant. The sky a hard blue from horizon to horizon. The bay below it the color of pewter. The light coming in low and direct from the southeast and landing on everything with a specificity that the gray days do not have. You can see the individual trees at the edge of the clearing. You can see the grain in the boards of the nearest house. The light in March is not the light of warmth, but it is the light of precision, and precision is its own kind of comfort. The settlement has 30 houses on its plan, and 7 completed. More are being framed now that the men are well enough to work again. Not all the men, and not all day, but more than in February, and the sound of axes in the morning, which you have not heard steadily since December, is back. You listen to it while you carry the water bucket up the hill to the spring. Axes in the morning mean people are upright and working is the best available news. The spring path is no longer fully iced. On the north side of the path, in the shadows, the ice is still there and will be for weeks. On the south side, where the morning light hits the ground, there are patches where the mud has thawed and refrozen and thawed again, and when you step on these patches your boot sinks slightly and comes back up with a sucking sound. This is the sound of March, the freeze-thaw cycle beginning, the ground not yet committed to either state, trying out warmth in small amounts before deciding. You fill the bucket and come back down and deliver the water and begin the business of the morning, which is the same business as every morning, the same rounds of the same people, requiring the same things. But there is something different today that you cannot quite name, a quality of attention in the settlement, people moving with slightly more intention, voices slightly louder than they have been. You notice it without knowing what it means. In the afternoon, you are in the Hopkins house mending a shirt when you hear it. A voice from outside. Not one of the colonists' voices, not the flat vowels of the English West Country or the clipped speech of the Leiden congregation. A voice you have not heard before, calling out across the settlement, in words you recognize as English words but arranged in a way that takes you a moment to parse. Welcome, Englishmen. You go to the door. Giles Hopkins is already there, and Stephen Hopkins is walking fast toward the settlement street, and all along the street other people are coming out of their houses, and in the middle of the cleared ground stands a man. He is tall. He is an Abenaki man, from the people to the north, and his name is Samoset, and he walked into Plymouth today with a directness that astonishes everyone, because no one among the colonists has had a face-to-face encounter with any native person in 4 months of occupation. And suddenly here he is, standing in the settlement street, speaking English. He learned his English from the fishing boats, English and French vessels that have been working the cod banks off this coast for decades, stopping to trade and provision at the native villages along the shore. Samoset has been hearing English for years. He speaks it imperfectly but functionally, enough to be understood and to understand. He asks for beer. He is given beer and biscuit and butter and cheese and pudding and a piece of mallard, the best the colony can offer its first official visitor, which is not much, but which he accepts without comment. He stays the night. He sleeps in Stephen Hopkins' house because Hopkins is one of the few people in the settlement who has experience managing unexpected guests in unfamiliar territory, and Governor Carver assigns him the responsibility. You make up a pallet near the fire for Samoset, and you observe him from the edge of the room the way you observe everything, quietly, without being asked to observe, filing what you see. He is not what the colonists' fear imagined. He is a man who has seen English people before and is not particularly afraid of them, which is itself remarkable information, that to him you are the understandable thing, the thing he has a category for. He eats and he sleeps, and in the morning he leaves and says he will come back with people who know more than he does. He comes back on the 16th of March with 5 men. He says that the Sachem Massasoit, who controls the territory that includes Plymouth, wishes to meet with the English. The meeting is arranged for the following day. You are not part of the meeting. You watch from a distance. Massasoit arrives on the 21st of March with 60 men, carrying arms, walking out of the tree line in a way that makes the remaining 51 colonists feel the arithmetic of the situation very precisely. Governor Carver goes out to meet him with 6 men and a trumpet and a drum and a green rug and cushions carried from the ship, which are the most formal objects available. They drink together, a drink of strong water that makes Massasoit's face run with sweat, which he wipes away without reaction. The treaty they negotiate on that day, through Squanto as interpreter, is one of the most consequential agreements made in early American history. The terms are mutual defense, mutual peace, no weapons when visiting each other, and the acknowledgement that Massasoit's people and the Plymouth people are allies. It will hold, with complications, for 50 years. You carry a tray of biscuit and butter from the Hopkins house to the edge of the meeting area and set it down where it can be reached, and then you step back to your proper distance. This is the shape of your participation in the most significant political event in the colony's short history. You carried the tray, and then you stepped back. The treaty is concluded before supper. The men come back into the settlement street talking about it with an energy you have not heard in months, a forward-moving energy, plans and intentions and what happens next. You listen while you work. What you hear is this. There is a man named Tisquantum, whom the English call Squanto, who will stay with the colony as guide and interpreter. He is a Patuxent, from the very people whose village stood on this land before the epidemic. He speaks English. He knows this coast. He will change what is possible here. He is the most useful person in New England, from the Plymouth colony's perspective. But that is next winter. This is March, and March in Massachusetts, even with the treaty signed and Squanto present and the light returning, is still cold. The morning temperature is still below freezing. The bay still has ice in its sheltered coves. The food stores are still low. The graves on Coles Hill are still there, smooth and planted over, holding their number. You bank the fire at the end of the day and lie down and listen to the settlement. It sounds different now, not louder exactly, but less like something holding its breath. Outside, the first birds of spring are beginning. Not the winter birds, not the jays and the chickadees that have been here all along, but the first migrants coming up from the south, arriving in ones and twos, calling from the trees at the edge of the clearing in voices that belong to a different season. You listen to them in the dark. They are calling from the trees the way birds call, without knowing what winter was, without knowing what it cost, simply here now, calling because the light is right and the season is turning. You have been here since November. You have carried water and wood and food and children through the worst months this place has to offer. You have wrapped the dead in their blankets. You have banked the fire every night so that the morning would have something to start from. You are still here. The birds are calling. The light is coming back. You close your eyes and let March do what March is going to do. The ground thaws in April the way the ground always thaws, unevenly, arguing with itself. The path to the spring, which has been frozen solid since December, softens first on the south-facing slope, where the morning light hits earliest. By mid-April, the mud there is deep enough to pull your boot off if you step wrong, and you have learned to walk along the edge of the path where the grass is still matted and flat from winter and gives you something to push against. The north-facing side stays frozen 2 weeks longer. You know exactly where the boundary is because you cross it every day. April is the month the Mayflower leaves. She has been here since November, 5 months at anchor in Plymouth Harbor, her masts visible from the settlement street, her lantern at the stern visible on dark nights, a fixed point in the bay that has meant something, though you would not be able to say exactly what. Not home. Home is gone. 7 years of indenture gone. England is not a place you are returning to in any near future, but the ship has been a presence, a fact in the harbor, something that connects this place to another place. The 5th of April, 1621, she weighs anchor. The crew is recovered enough to sail. Not all of them, not fully, but enough. Captain Jones has waited as long as he can and longer. He has lost men here. He has lost his ship's master, and his boatswain, and his cook, and his gunner, and 3 quartermasters, and he is ready to go home. Not one of the 51 surviving colonists goes with him. This is remarkable, and you have thought about it, that even now, after the winter, after 51 people dead, after everything the first season has shown you about the difficulty of this place, not one person walked to the longboat and asked to be taken back. Some of them had no England to return to. Some of them had debts the crossing was supposed to escape. Some of them believed, with a conviction you do not share, that this was God's appointed place for them. You stay because your indenture stays. 7 years. You are in the first of them. You watch the Mayflower sail from the shore. She moves out of the harbor slowly, her sails filling in the morning wind, growing smaller until she is a shape, and then a smudge, and then nothing. The harbor is empty. The bay is just a bay. You stand there for a moment. Then you go back to the Hopkins house because there is work to do. The work in April is different from the work of winter. The desperate maintenance of January and February, keeping fire, keeping people alive, carrying water through the dark, has given way to something with more direction. The colony is building toward a first harvest, and building toward a first harvest means understanding the soil, understanding the season, understanding what grows here and how. This is where Squanto becomes the most important person in Plymouth. Squanto, is a Patuxent man who speaks fluent English because the English took him. In 1614, Captain Thomas Hunt sailed from this coast to Spain with 27 Patuxent and Nauset men as cargo to sell as slaves. Squanto was among them. He escaped Spain, made his way to England, sailed back across the Atlantic with English expeditions, and arrived on this shore in 1619 to find his entire village gone. The epidemic had taken everyone he knew. He has been living with the Wampanoag under Massasoit since then. He is perhaps the most isolated person in New England, belonging fully to no group, speaking the languages of two worlds that are trying to learn whether they can coexist. He stays at Plymouth not entirely from choice. He is useful here, and useful as a kind of belonging, or close enough. In late April, Squanto shows the colonists how to plant corn in this soil. The method is not the English method. You do not plow long furrows and sow seed broadcast. The soil here is too sandy in places, too rocky in others, and the English approach does not suit it. The Wampanoag method is mound planting. You build small hills of soil, each one about a foot high and 3 feet across, spaced about 4 feet apart, 4 or 5 seeds to a hill, pushed in with a finger to a depth of an inch. And into each mound. This is the part the colonists find strange and will argue about. You put a fish. Specifically, alewives. They are running in the brook at the edge of the settlement in April, moving upstream to spawn the way they have moved upstream every April since the brook existed. You can catch them with your hands if you are patient. Squanto shows the men how to catch them in quantity and how to bury them in the mound. 2 or 3 fish per hill, placed around the seeds, covered with soil. As the fish decompose over the growing season, they release nitrogen into the soil directly around the roots of the corn plants. This is a practice developed over generations of farming this specific soil. It works. The colonists who follow it will harvest in October approximately 20 acres of corn. The colonists who do not plant this way will harvest less. You plant corn. This is new to you. In England, you worked in houses, not fields, but in Plymouth in 1621, the distinction between household work and field work is academic. There are 51 people. The work must be distributed across whoever is standing. You kneel at a mound and press seeds in with your finger. 5 seeds to a hill, an inch deep. The soil dark and cold still, and smelling of something alive that has been waiting under the frost. The fish smell, the alewives decomposing in the earth around you, is strong and rank and specific. You breathe it and press the seeds and cover them and move to the next mound. Behind you, in the brook, you can hear the water moving. In the field to your left, Giles Hopkins is working a mound with the same motion you are using, learned in the same afternoon from the same demonstration. He is 13 years old and planting corn in Massachusetts in a technique shown to him by a man from the people whose land this was before the epidemic took them. The world is stranger than anyone told you it would be. Governor Carver dies in April. This is unexpected. He has been healthy all winter, one of the ones who held. He is working in the field one morning in mid-April, and he complains of a pain in his head and goes inside, and 2 days later he is dead. He is the governor of the colony, the man who signed the Mayflower Compact first, the organizer of this entire enterprise, and he dies in April of a spring he did not know he would not survive. His wife Catherine dies of grief within weeks. This is what the accounts say, died of grief. Whether this means despair produced illness or illness was already present and the loss of her husband removed whatever was holding it back, the accounts do not say. What they say is that she followed him quickly and that the colony in late April buries its governor. William Bradford is elected to replace him. He is 31 years old. He has been sick through February and recovered. His wife is gone. He is now the governor of a colony of 51 people, in an uncertain relationship with a land that does not yet know them, holding a title given to him by 41 men who signed a 46-word document in the great cabin of a ship that is now 3 weeks out to sea toward England. He accepts the position and goes to work. You watch this from the edge of the settlement street, the small ceremony, if it can be called that, of one man replacing another. Bradford is quiet and precise, and he has a quality of attention that makes people feel considered, even when he says nothing. You have observed this. You have not spoken to him directly since February, when you brought him water in the common house, and he said thank you in his lowered, sick voice. You will not speak to him directly for some time. You are a servant in a household he is not responsible for. Your paths cross at the margins of things. May arrives. The days are genuinely warm now, or what passes for warm after a New England winter, 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the afternoon, cold still at night, but 50 degrees in the afternoon feels like something to be grateful for when you have been cold since November. The corn is in the ground. The beans are going in. They are planted in the same mounds as the corn, a few weeks later, so that their vines can climb the corn stalks as the corn grows. This is another technique from the Wampanoag agricultural tradition. The beans fix nitrogen in the soil. The corn provides the climbing structure, and the system is self-sustaining in a way that English monoculture farming is not. Squanto also shows them how to find eels in the flats at low tide, how to tread on them with your feet to bring them out of the mud, then catch them with your hands. This is a skill that takes practice. The first time you try it, standing in cold water at the edge of the harbor at low tide, feeling with your feet for the shape of something moving in the mud. You step on an eel and it pulls away from you and is gone before you can think about what to do next. The second time you are faster. The third time you catch it. The eel is 2 feet long and vigorous in your hands, and you carry it up to the bank and the cooking fire, and you are aware, as you carry it, that you have just learned to do something that no one in England would recognize as a skill, but that here, on this shore, in this season, is the kind of knowledge that keeps people alive. You are collecting these skills the way you once collected nothing, because in England there was nothing you needed to collect. Here, every piece of knowledge the place offers is something that goes into your hands and stays. The colony has a specific problem in May that it does not talk about directly, but that is present in every calculation. The investor group in England, the Merchant Adventurers, a syndicate of London businessmen who financed the voyage, is expecting a return. The colonists came here with a debt. The ship, the provisions, the supplies, all of it was financed on the expectation of profit to be generated by fishing, trading, and eventually by growing crops for export. The debt is substantial, approximately £7,000, a figure that the 51 surviving colonists have no realistic prospect of repaying in the short term, but which shapes every decision about what to do and how. A ship called the Fortune arrives in November 1621. bringing 35 new colonists, no additional food, and a letter from the merchant adventurers expressing disappointment that more profit has not been generated. This has not happened yet. You are in May, but the obligation exists in the background, and it shapes the conversation you overhear when men discuss what the growing season needs to produce. The days of May are long and increasingly warm. You work outside for the first time without your coat in the last week of May, carrying material to where a new house is being framed, and the air on your arms and neck is something you had almost forgotten about. The simple fact of warm air on skin without the wool between them. The fields are showing green. Not much green, not yet, but the first thread-thin shoots of the corn pushing out of the mounds, visible if you know where to look. You know where to look because you planted them. You go to the field in the evening sometimes and check the mounds you were responsible for, crouching down to look at the shoots, touching the soil around them. There is something in this that you do not have a name for. The care you took with the planting was not sentimental, it was practical. The work required of you, the same as the water carrying and the fire banking. But the shoots coming out of the ground now feel like something you did, something you are responsible for. And this is a different feeling than the feeling of having carried a load from one place to another. You will see this corn harvested in October. You will help grind it and cook it and serve it. You will be at the table or near it, serving at it, when the Wampanoag come in autumn for the 3-day celebration that will later be remembered as the first Thanksgiving, though no one calls it that now, and no one is thinking about memory. They are thinking about food, and about what it means to have survived, and about the winter that is coming again. But that is October. This is May. The shoots are small and green, and the air on your arms is warm, and the bay below the settlement is blue, actually blue, for the first time since you arrived. You stand in the field for a moment at the end of the day, looking at the shoots and the bay beyond them. The light is going gold in the west. The birds in the forest are beginning their evening noise, the full chorus of May. Everything that wintered over and everything that has come back, all of them calling at once. You are still here. The corn is growing. The light is good. You pick up your coat from where you set it on the fence post and walk back to the Hopkins house. The fire needs banking for the night, and the children need supper. And Oceanus Hopkins, who is 6 months old now and round in the face and beginning to have opinions about things, needs to be settled before Elizabeth Hopkins can rest. The world goes on. You go with it. The night comes in gently, the way May nights come. Not the hard drop of November dark, but a slow fading, the sky going from blue to deep blue, to the first stars, one at a time, as if the night is deciding which ones to show. You bank the fire and lie down, and the air from the windows. They have oiled cloth over them now, which lets in light without all the cold, carries the smell of turned earth and new leaves, and the particular green smell of things that have been waiting all winter to grow. You close your eyes. Outside, Plymouth is quiet. The houses on the settlement street are dark. The field where you planted corn is dark. The brook is running. The bay is still. Somewhere in the trees at the edge of the clearing, something moves. A deer, probably, or one of the other animals that come to the edge of the clearing at night, curious and cautious. You hear it, and then you don't hear it. Sleep comes the way it always comes, without announcement, without ceremony, simply the moment when the day stops and the night begins to do what the night does. The corn is in the ground. The governor is dead, and another has taken his place. The ship is gone. The work continues. That is enough. For tonight, that is enough. June arrives, and the colony begins to look, for the first time, like something intended to last. The 7th house on the settlement street is finished in the first week of June, and the 8th is framed and going up. The sound of hammering and sawing is regular now in a way it was not through the winter. Not desperate, not stopping and starting with the weather and the illness, but steady. There are enough well people now to maintain a regular work schedule, and regular work produces regular sound, and regular sound is its own kind of comfort. You have been given a new assignment in June. Elizabeth Hopkins, who has been recovering slowly from the physical toll of the winter, the birth of Oceanos at sea, the weeks of reduced food, the cold, is well enough now to manage her household without you at every moment. And so Stephen Hopkins has lent you to the Brewster household, where William Brewster, the elder, needs help with cooking and household management while he continues his work with the sick and with the congregation. This is the shape of indenture in a settlement this size. You go where you are needed, assigned by your employer, without being asked your preference. The Brewster household is 2 streets up from the Hopkins house, a slightly larger structure with a separate sleeping space for the elder himself and a common room where the household gathers. William Brewster is 60 years old. He is a Cambridge-educated man. He studied at Peterhouse, Cambridge, in the 1580s, though he did not take a degree, and he worked as a government courier and diplomat before becoming the separatist congregation's most important elder in Leiden. He has a scholar's habit of reading even here, where books are scarce, and a scholar's habit of precision in speech. He treats you with a particular courtesy that you are not accustomed to and that takes you a moment to understand. He says please when he asks you for things. He says thank you when you bring them. This is not universal among the people you serve. It is not required of them. With Brewster, it seems to come from the same place his faith comes from, a conviction, genuine and not performed, that the distinction between master and servant is a practical arrangement, not a statement about the weight of souls. You do not discuss this with him. You make his porridge and his supper, and you clean his house, and you observe, as you observe everything, quietly, from the appropriate distance. In June, the colony holds its first general muster, a military exercise organized by Miles Standish, in which all able-bodied men drill with their muskets on the hill above the settlement. The muskets are matchlock flintlocks, most of them. A matchlock requires a lit match cord to fire and is sensitive to moisture, which has been a consistent problem through the wet months. The maintenance of weapons in a coastal New England climate requires constant attention. The barrels must be kept dry, the powder must be stored in sealed containers, the match cord must be replaced regularly. Standish runs the drill with the brisk precision of a professional soldier, and the men, many of whom have never been soldiers, attempt to follow. You watch from the edge of the cleared ground above the settlement, and it is difficult to judge how effective they would be if tested. But the willingness to practice is itself a form of seriousness, and seriousness in this place has kept people alive before. The relationship with Massasoit's people is holding. Squanto moves between the settlement and the Wampanoag villages as interpreter and intermediary, and traders from various bands come to Plymouth with skins and food to exchange. The colony has very little to trade with, some metal tools, some cloth, a small amount of English goods, but the exchanges happen, and each one is a negotiation that Squanto manages with a diplomatic precision that impresses you when you see it. He is not, you have learned, universally trusted by the Wampanoag leadership. Some among Massasoit's advisors regard his closeness to the English with suspicion. He is too useful to the English, and this makes him, from certain perspectives, too dangerous. This tension is something Squanto manages by being more necessary than he is threatening, which is a strategy you recognize because it is the strategy of every servant who has ever needed something from a situation that did not require them. You are careful about what you recognize in Squanto's situation. It is not the same as yours. The distances are too vast, the losses too different, but the structure, being useful to people who have power over you, navigating their needs carefully, taking what you can from the margin, that structure you know. The summer work in June is full and varied. Beyond the corn, the colonists are planting kitchen gardens on their individual lots. Turnips, parsnips, onions, cabbages, the English vegetables brought as seeds from home. These grow well enough in the Plymouth soil, though not as prolifically as in English conditions. The soil here is sandier, the summers hotter and shorter, and the kitchen gardens require more water than the corn mounds, which are designed to retain moisture at the root. You water the Brewster garden in the evenings, carrying water from the well that has been dug near the common house, 40 feet deep, hand-dug, lined with stones, the most significant piece of infrastructure the colony has built aside from the houses. Clean water nearby changes the daily labor of the settlement enormously. You no longer walk to the spring on the hill for household water. You still walk there sometimes, in the evening, for the view. From the spring, you can see the entire settlement, the street, the houses, the field with its corn growing knee-high now, the harbor below, the bay beyond that. You can see Cole's Hill, where the graves are planted over, smooth and green now in the summer grass. You can see the cannon on its platform at the top of the hill, pointing out to sea. From up here, the settlement looks organized. It looks like something built on purpose. The chaos of the first weeks, the arguing about lots, the incomplete houses, the movement between ship and shore has resolved into this: a street, some houses, a field, a well, a cannon. 51 people, less than half of what's set out. But the corn is growing, the treaty is holding, the Mayflower is gone, and you are still here, and the work continues. And in October there will be a harvest, and in November the fortune will arrive with 35 more mouths, and not enough food to feed them, and the winter will come again, and you will face it the way you have learned to face things in this place. From the front, directly with your hands. The evening light on the bay below is long and gold. June light. The longest days of the year are close. The birds in the field are working the insects that have come with the warm months, moving low over the corn in purposeful arcs. You stand at the spring for a few minutes more, watching the light go, and then you go back down to the settlement. The Brewster house is quiet. The elder is reading by the fire, a small fire, more habit than necessity in June, but a fire nonetheless, because a fire means something beyond warmth in a place that survived on fire all winter. You make the supper, you set it on the table, you call to him, and he comes, and he says thank you, which he always says, and you sit in your corner and eat your portion. Outside, the settlement is quiet in the long evening. The corn is in the field. The graves are on the hill. The bay is still, and the sky is still, and the summer is here, briefly, before the year turns again toward whatever winter is preparing. You bank the fire for the night. You fold your blanket. You lie down on your pallet in the corner of the Brewster house. The night is warm enough that you do not need both blankets. You fold one and put it aside. Underneath you, the floor is wood now, not frozen earth. The Brewster house has a proper board floor laid in March. Wood floor, wood walls, wood roof, a real house, something built on purpose. Outside Plymouth breathes, the same as always, the water, the trees, the birds settling for the night, the corn growing in the dark the way corn grows, without needing to be watched, without needing your attention, doing what it was planted to do. The floor is warm beneath you. The night is quiet. That is enough. Sleep. July comes in hot. Not English hot, not the mild, damp warmth you knew in the summers of your childhood, the warmth that was always apologizing for itself, hedged about with cloud and never quite committing. This is a different kind of heat, direct, unmediated. The sun in July at Plymouth coming straight down from directly overhead, and the humidity coming up from the ground and from the bay, and between the two of them the air sits on you like something with weight. You learn to work in the early morning and the late afternoon. The middle hours, from 10 until 3, are the hours when the heat is worst and the work is hardest and the least gets done per unit of effort. Squanto taught the men this, that the Wampanoag do not work the fields in the middle of the summer day, and that the corn does not require you to stand in the heat to watch it grow. The corn is taller than your waist now. It happened faster than you expected, a foot a week in the warmth of July. The stalks thick and ribbed under your hand when you walk the rows, the ears beginning to form inside their husks, not ready yet, but present, their weight starting to show on the stalk. You check the mounds you planted in the evenings when the heat has gone down, running your hand along the stalks, checking the soil for moisture. The bean vines are climbing the corn now the way they were supposed to. This is the part that looks like magic, even though it is just botany. The beans need something to climb. The corn needs nitrogen. The beans fix nitrogen from the air into the soil, two plants using each other, and both growing better for it than either would alone. You did not know about this relationship before Plymouth. Now you know it the way you know the sound of the spring path in each season. It is in your hands and your feet, not just your head. Squanto moves through the colony in July with a freedom of motion that no one else has. He goes to the Wampanoag villages and comes back. He goes down to the harbor to check the fishing and comes back. He walks the perimeter of the settlement in the mornings in a way that looks like habit, like someone taking the measure of a place they live in. He does not eat with the colonists, usually. He eats at the edge of things, in his own way, in his own time. You watch him more than you watch most people, because he is interesting to watch. He has a quality of competence that is specific and unhurried. He does not hurry because he knows things, and knowing things means you do not need to hurry. When he shows the men something, how to set an eel trap, how to read the tide for clamming, how to bank a cooking fire that will hold all day, he does it once, clearly, and then he watches to see if they understood, and if they did not, he does it again. He has not said much to you directly. You are a servant girl, and he is the most important man in the settlement from a practical standpoint. and the social distance between those two positions is wide. But once, in July, you are at the edge of the cornfield in the evening doing your check of the mounds, and he is there too, checking something at the far end of the rows, and he looks up and sees you and nods. You nod back. He goes back to what he was looking at. You go back to what you were looking at. This is, in some ways, the most equal exchange you have had with anyone in Plymouth. Two people who notice things, noticing things, in the same field. July is also the month the colony faces its first serious external threat since the winter. Word comes through Squanto, through the Wampanoag network, that a Massachusetts sachem named Corbitant is working against the Massasoit Treaty, trying to build opposition to the alliance between Plymouth and the Wampanoag, possibly trying to capture or kill Squanto, whose usefulness to the English makes him a target for anyone who wants the English to be less useful. Miles Standish takes 10 men to Namasket, a village 14 miles inland, where Corbitant is thought to be. They go at night in August, armed with muskets. They do not find Corbitant. He has already left. But the demonstration of willingness to respond militarily matters to the surrounding sachems, who have been watching to see whether Plymouth will defend its allies. Several sachems who had been neutral send representatives to Plymouth in the weeks after, acknowledging Massasoit's authority and, by extension, the treaty. This is how security works in southern New England in 1621, not through walls or numbers, which the colonists do not have, but through reputation, through the willingness to act, and through the relationships Squanto maintains across the network of Wampanoag-affiliated communities. The colonists are too few to be safe on their own terms. Their safety is entirely a function of their relationship with Massasoit. You understand this at a practical level, the way you understand most things here, not through the discussions you are excluded from, but through the shape of the decisions that result. The men go armed when they go more than a mile from the settlement. Standish sets a watch at night. The cannon on Coles Hill is kept primed. These are the behaviors of people who know exactly how exposed they are. The harvest begins in September. You have been watching the corn for months, checking its progress, comparing what you see to what Squanto said to expect, waiting for the moment the husks begin to dry and the silk at the top turns from pale to brown. When it comes all at once. The way things in fields come, the whole field crossing the threshold at roughly the same time, and then the work of getting it in begins. Harvesting corn is not the work of a single afternoon. The ears must be stripped from the stalks individually, the husks pulled back, the corn inspected for disease and insects and damage from birds and deer. The good ears go into the basket that are brought to the storage building. The same common house that was a hospital all winter is now a storehouse, its floor deep in harvested corn. The damaged ears are sorted separately and used first. You work in the field from first light until the light fails. The corn dust from the dried husks gets into your throat and your eyes and the creases of your elbows and behind your ears. You cough it up in the evenings and your eyes are red and itchy by afternoon. Everyone in the field looks the same, dusty, red-eyed, moving steadily from stalk to stalk, the baskets filling and being carried to the storehouse and coming back empty to be filled again. The 20 acres they planted yield more than the colonists expected. This is the vindication of Squanto's method. The fish and mound planting in this specific soil produced more corn than English furrow planting would have, and the colonists who followed the method most carefully harvested the most. The final count is not exact. The records are not precise in this way. But by October, the storehouse has more food in it than at any point since the Mayflower arrived. More than enough food. Enough food. This is a category of situations so new that it takes a moment to recognize. All winter and spring and summer, the calculation has been not enough, making do. This will have to last. There is less than we need, and now there is more than enough. The number has flipped direction, and standing in the storehouse looking at the corn piled on the floor, you feel something shift in your body that you have not felt since England. Not safety, exactly. Safety is a large claim for a place this small and this exposed. But sufficiency, the baseline fact of enough. Governor Bradford makes a decision in October. He will organize a celebration, a harvest celebration, 3 days, to give thanks for what has been produced and to maintain the relationship with Massasoit and the Wampanoag. 4 men are sent out fowling for the occasion, and they return with enough ducks and geese to feed the settlement for a week. The celebration is announced. You begin cooking on the morning of the first day. The cooking for an event of this scale, 3 days for a settlement of 51 people, plus however many Wampanoag guests arrive, requires an organization of fire and pot and time that is the most complex logistical problem you have managed since arriving in Plymouth. The fires outside the houses are lit before dawn, the pots are filled, the fowl are cleaned and jointed and set to roast on spits over the larger fires. There are 5 women left in the colony who are well and able to cook. 5 women feeding 50+ people for 3 days. This is the arithmetic of the celebration, the same arithmetic of the winter, the same distribution of work across the people remaining, but in a different direction. Instead of maintaining the sick, you are cooking for the living. Instead of rationing against a dwindling store, you are working with abundance. The feeling is different, not easier exactly. The work is hard and the fires are hot and the hours are long, but different. Masaso, it arrives on the first day with 90 men. 90. You are at the cooking fire when the call goes up from the edge of the settlement, and you look up and see them coming out of the tree line. 90 Wampanoag men, armed, walking into the settlement clearing in a group. The colonists receive them, and Massasoit and Bradford exchange greetings through Squanto, and the 3-day celebration begins. The Wampanoag contribution to the feast is 5 deer, killed and brought that morning. You receive them at the cooking area, and you and the other women begin processing the deer alongside the fowl that has already been roasting since dawn. Deer prepared this way, over open fire, in sections, basted with their own fat, takes most of a day. You work beside a Wampanoag woman who has come with the group, and neither of you speaks the other's language, and the work between you is conducted entirely in the shared grammar of heat and time and what needs doing next. She knows things about deer that you don't. How to remove a particular tendon that makes the haunch cook more evenly. How to judge doneness by the color of the fat rather than by time. You watch her and you do what she does, and the work is better for it. This is not a thought you have consciously, that you are learning from her, that she knows more than you about this particular problem. It is just the practical observation of the moment, the same attention you apply to everything here. Someone knows something useful. You watch them. You learn it. The 3 days of the celebration are not entirely comprehensible to you from where you stand, which is at the fire and the serving table, not at the center of things. You see fragments, Standish drilling his men for the Wampanoag visitors, a demonstration of military preparedness that is also a kind of theater, both sides understanding the performance for what it is. Games on the grass, running, jumping, shooting at targets with bow and musket. The sounds of men eating and talking, the two languages mixing in a way that makes almost no sense phonetically, but that functions anyway, through gesture and Squanto's constant translation. You eat on the second day of the celebration, in the late afternoon after the serving is done. You sit on the ground near the cooking fire with the other women who have been working since dawn, and you eat the food that you have been cooking for 2 days, and the deer is good, and the fowl is good, and the corn, ground and boiled into a thick porridge, tastes of everything you put into the ground in April. It tastes of the fish in the mounds and the seeds pushed in with your finger, and the cold morning when you knelt in the field and pressed them down. It tastes of everything the summer did to them while you watched. You eat and the fire crackles, and around you the sounds of the celebration continue, and the October light falls across Plymouth in long gold lines, the same light that fell across it in November when you first arrived, but warmer now and kinder, and carrying with it the smell of the harvest instead of the smell of the sea. The corn grew, the people came, the year held. October is ending, November is coming. You know what November means. Everyone here knows what November means. The fortune will come in November with 35 new mouths and not enough food for them, and the careful sufficiency of October will be stretched again, and Standish will put the settlement on half rations through the winter to make the stores last. The second winter will not be like the first. The colony knows things now that it did not know then. How to build, how to plant, how to trade, how to keep itself warm. There will be sick people, and there will be hard days, and there will be cold that surprises you even when you think you know what cold is. But it will not be like the first winter. You know this the way you know the path to the spring in each season, in your feet, in your hands. The fire burns low. The women around you are beginning to move, gathering plates and pots, beginning the work of cleaning up after 3 days of feeding. You stand and stretch your back and pick up the pot nearest you and carry it to the washing area. Around you, Plymouth goes on. The men are talking by the central fire, Squanto moving between the two languages. Massasoit's 90 men beginning to settle for the night in the cleared area outside the settlement. The stars are out. A clear October sky, the same stars that were there in November when you arrived, the same stars that were there all winter while you carried water. You wash the pot and set it to dry and go back for the next one. The night is cold. Not February cold, not the cold that goes through wool and into bone. October cold, the kind of cold that reminds you it is coming, that what you have built is real and has been tested, that you know more than you did, that the corn is in the store and the treaty is holding and the fire is banked and the morning will come. You do the last of the washing. You dry your hands on your apron. You bank the fire for the night. The settlement is quiet. Above it, the stars. The night takes you. The morning after the first day of the celebration, you are up before anyone else. This is habit. The fire needs feeding. The porridge needs starting. The water needs fetching. The celebration does not change the morning requirements. You rise in the gray pre-dawn, move to the fire, add wood, and kneel close to the new flame the way you have been kneeling close to new flames since November. Outside, the settlement is quiet except for the sound of 90 Wampanoag men sleeping in the clearing. You know they are there because you can hear them. The same distributed sound of a large group breathing. The same as the 'tween deck of the Mayflower, but outside, under the open sky, in the October cold. You do not go out to look. You make the porridge. Squanto comes to the cooking fire before the others are up. He does this sometimes, appears at the edges of things, early, when the work is still preparatory and the day has not yet declared its character. He takes a cup of the porridge when you offer it, and stands at the edge of the fire holding it. You have been wanting to ask him something since July. You have not asked it because the opportunity has not been right, and because you are not sure the question is yours to ask, and because the shape of the question is difficult. This morning, with the fire and the porridge and the quiet and the 90 men sleeping in the clearing, the question comes out before you have decided to ask it. You ask him if he misses England. He looks at you. There is a pause, not the pause of someone who did not understand, but the pause of someone deciding how much of an answer to give. He says that he misses certain things, the bread, the particular sound of a city. He says this matter-of-factly, the way you might say the fire is low. You ask him if he wants to go back. He looks at the fire. He says there is no village to go back to here, and in England there is no village that is his. So the question does not quite have the shape he would need it to have in order to answer it. He drinks the porridge. He hands you the cup and goes to check on something at the far end of the settlement, and you stand at the fire and think about the shape of a question that does not quite fit the situation it is trying to describe. You have a village to go back to, technically. 7 years from now, when the indenture is finished, you could buy passage and go back to England and find the place you came from and see what remains. This is a fact that is present but distant, the way the shore of England was present but distant when you were in the 'tween deck of the Mayflower. Real, but not the thing in front of you. The thing in front of you is the fire and the porridge and the second day of the celebration and 90 men waking up in the clearing and the corn in the storehouse and the morning path to the spring and the children in the Hopkins house who will be hungry when they wake. This is what you have. You tend it. That is what you do. The second day of the celebration brings contests and games in the afternoon. The men of the colony and the Wampanoag men together in the cleared field above the settlement, running races, shooting at targets with bow and musket, wrestling in pairs. Standish has organized this deliberately, the same way he organizes everything, as a form of display, a demonstration of vigor and capability that says something to Massasoit's men about the colony's strength without saying it in words. The Wampanoag men are better at most of the contests. Their runners are faster. Their archers are more accurate. One of Massasoit's men shoots an arrow through a small hoop hung from a post at 40 yards, which the colonists receive with genuine admiration because it is genuinely admirable. Standish watches all of this with a professional appreciation. He has been a soldier long enough to recognize competence regardless of its origin. You watch from the edge of the field while you work. The cooking fire needs tending even during the games. You tend it. The third day is quieter. The energy of the first 2 days has been spent, and the celebration settles into something more like a long shared meal. Food coming out of the cooking area throughout the day, and people eating in small groups across the settlement. Wampanoag and colonist mixed together in a way that would have been unimaginable in November. Not intimate. The two groups do not share a language or a full understanding of each other's presence here, and the treaty is a practical arrangement, not a friendship, but civil, cautious, the kind of peace that forms when both parties have decided, for now, that peace is more useful than the alternative. Masaso it leaves on the afternoon of the third day. His 90 men go with him, back into the tree line, and the settlement watches them go and then turns back to the work of being a settlement. You collect the plates and cups and pots from the third day of eating and carry them to the washing area. Your feet hurt, your back hurts, your hands are burned in 2 places from careless moments at the fire over 3 days. You wash the dishes anyway. Edward Winslow, one of the surviving colonists who will go on to be the colony's most important diplomat and eventually the governor of Plymouth colony, writes about this celebration in a letter sent to England on the Fortune in November. His account, written while the events are recent and his memory clear, mentions the 4 men sent fowling, the 5 deer brought by Massasoit's people, the 3 days of celebration. He does not mention the women who cooked. He does not mention the hours before dawn or the burns on your hands. This is the shape of history as it is recorded. The events are noted. The labor that made them possible is not. You know this, and you do not spend energy being angry about it, because anger at the shape of things costs something, and you have learned to spend carefully. You wash the last dish and set it to dry and dry your hands on your apron. The celebration is over. The corn is in the store. The Wampanoag are gone back into the trees. The fortune is coming in November, and with it 35 people who do not know yet what winter here means, and someone will have to show them, and some of that someone will be you. You go to the fire, you bank it for the night. The October stars are out. You look at them for a moment, the same stars that were out in November when you arrived, the same ones that were out all winter while you carried water and tended the sick and wrapped the dead in their blankets, the same stars that were out in April when you pressed seeds into the cold ground. The same stars that will be out in November when the second winter comes. You know the stars of this latitude now. You know the way Orion rises in the east in autumn and climbs through the winter sky. You know the North Star from the night on the longboat when one of the men pointed it out to you as a way of knowing direction in the dark. You know the Pleiades, which the Wampanoag also know, and which Squanto named for you once in passing, in his language, a sound you cannot reproduce but that you remember hearing. The stars are the same on both sides of the ocean. You learned this on the Mayflower. The same constellations, just at different angles, tilted slightly with the latitude. Everything familiar but repositioned. You are repositioned. You are the same person who stood on the quay at Plymouth, England, and watched the Mayflower loading, and you are also entirely different, and the stars above Plymouth, Massachusetts, are the same stars that were above Plymouth, England, on that day, tilted slightly, repositioned. You go inside, you lie down. The night settles around you. November is coming. You will be ready. The fortune arrives on the 11th of November, 1621. Exactly 1 year after the Mayflower anchored in Provincetown Harbor. You notice this, and you suspect others notice it too, though no one says it directly. The number is too neat, too precisely calibrated to irony, for a place that has not had much use for irony. She is smaller than the Mayflower. a vessel of 55 tons, roughly half the size. She carries 35 passengers, which is a number the Mayflower's tween deck could absorb without thinking. The Fortune's tween deck holds them badly. They arrive thin, seasick, having crossed in conditions even worse than the Mayflower's original crossing. No adequate food stored for the voyage, inadequate clothing for what is coming. You stand on the shore and watch the longboat bring them in. 35 people. You count them. They are wet and pale and unsteady on the gravel beach the way the Mayflower passengers were unsteady. Bodies that do not yet understand that the ground is not going to move. You understand the look on their faces. You had that look. You cannot remember having it exactly, but you know what it was because you have seen it every day since November in the faces of the people around you, slowly replaced over the course of the winter and spring and summer by something harder and more particular. The 35 new arrivals have no food with them. The ship brings tools and supplies, but not provisions, and the merchant adventurers in London apparently believed that the colony, after one full year, would be able to feed itself and its newcomers without difficulty. The colony cannot feed itself and its newcomers without difficulty. Governor Bradford makes this clear to the Fortune's captain, Thomas Barker, and the captain makes clear that there is nothing to be done about it. The supplies are what they are. The 35 people are here. Bradford calls a meeting. The outcome of the meeting is that the colony goes to half rations immediately, for everyone, including the new arrivals, starting tonight. Half of what was already a careful portion. You calculate this in your head while you are walking back to the Brewster house, and the number that comes out is not comfortable. You are back in the Hopkins house by November. Elizabeth Hopkins has recovered enough through the summer and autumn to manage with less help, but the arrival of 35 new people with no food and no knowledge of the place means that every house in the settlement is absorbing newcomers, and the Hopkins house has room, and so 3 of the Fortune's passengers are now on pallets in the Hopkins common room. Their names are Thomas Parents, who is 21, and will eventually become the 4th governor of Plymouth Colony, though no one knows this yet. A man named Philip Delanoy, 20 years old, whose family name will eventually become Delano, a name that will appear in American history again, much later, in contexts no one in this room can imagine, and a young woman whose name is Martha Ford, 18 years old, traveling with her husband William, who is sick already. Martha Ford has the look of the tween deck, of someone who has recently understood that the thing they were told about and the thing that exists are not the same thing. She sits near the Hopkins fire on the first evening and holds her hands out to it and does not speak. You bring her a cup of hot water. There is no tea, no broth, just hot water, and she takes it with both hands and says thank you in a voice that is barely there. You nod and go back to the cooking. You know what she needs. She needs the same thing you needed a year ago, which is not information and not comfort, but simply to be in a warm place with a fire and to be left alone to let her body understand that the crossing is over. You leave her alone with the fire. This is the most useful thing you can do for her tonight. The second winter begins the same way the first one began, in that the cold comes without announcement, and the days get short, and the work of staying warm is the primary occupation of every morning. But it does not begin the same way in any other sense. The colony knows how to build now. The houses on the settlement street are all completed, not 19 as originally planned, but 11 houses for the original group. and the newcomers from the fortune are distributed among them, while additional structures are planned. The wattle and daub walls have been improved since the first winter, the clay mixture applied more thickly, the gaps chinked more carefully, so that the wind does not find the same easy passage it found in December of last year. The common house has been converted back from hospital to storehouse, and the storehouse holds corn from the harvest. Not enough, given the new mouths, but more than nothing. There is dried fish from the summer's catch. There are some of the English kitchen vegetables, turnips, parsnips, stored in the root cellar dug below the storehouse floor. The half rations begin on the 12th of November, and they are what they are. You have lived on less. You know how to make the most of what is there, how to stretch a small amount of corn into a meal that fills the stomach even if it does not satisfy it, how to make peas porridge that is mostly water but still warm, how to serve children first and eat your own portion last. Martha Ford watches you cook for 3 days before she gets up from the fire and asks to help. You put her to work washing the bowls, which is easy work that can be done near the fire, and she does it without complaint. And after the bowls, you put her to stirring the pot, and after the pot, you put her to carrying water from the well. By the end of November, she is doing what you were doing a year ago, with the focused attention of someone who has understood that this place requires everything you have and does not apologize for it. Her husband William is sick. The same progression you have seen before, the crossing followed by the cold, followed by the lungs, and she manages his care alongside the household work with a steadiness that would have surprised her, probably, before the crossing. It does not surprise you. You have seen what people become when the situation asks it of them. December comes. The light fails early, and the cold comes in off the bay the way it came last year. The wet cold that goes through wool, and you pull your blankets around you in the mornings before the fire is up and let yourself feel the cold for exactly as long as it takes you to get up and move to the hearth. No longer. Getting up is the only thing that changes the temperature, and you get up. You know the cold now the way you know the path to the spring. You know where it is worst, the northeast corner of the Hopkins house, where the wind hits the wall directly and the plank at the base of the wall never quite sealed. You know the warmest spot, 6 feet from the fire, slightly to the left, where the draft from the chimney pulls the heat in a curve rather than straight up. You position the children's pallets there. You sleep nearer the wall. You know the exact weight of the firewood needed to get through a night in December without the fire going out. You know it in your arms from carrying it. 1 full load, plus 2 pieces in reserve. If the wind is from the north, you need the reserve. If the wind is from the south, the fire holds through on the main load alone. You know the spring path in December ice and the well bucket in freezing weather, and the way the tallow candles burn down at different rates depending on the draft in the room. You know these things the way you know the weight of the Hopkins chest you carried off the Mayflower a year ago. Not because anyone told you, but because the place taught you, morning by morning, cold by cold, fire by fire. You are 18 years old. You are not the person who stood on the gravel beach in November 1620 and felt the ground not moving and did not know what to do about it. You are the person who knows what to do about it, about most of it, about enough of it. William Ford dies in December. Not Martha's husband, William Ford the younger, a different William Ford, one of the fortune passengers. He is the first of the newcomers to die, and his death sits differently in the settlement than the deaths of the first winter did. not because it is less sad, but because the colony that receives it is a different colony than the one that buried its first dead on Coles Hill. The people who were here through the first winter understand death in this place. They understand how to keep going after it. They know what to do with the blanket and the hole in the schedule and the space on the floor where someone used to sleep. This knowledge is terrible and useful, the way most knowledge here is terrible and useful. You are part of this group now, the ones who were here for the first winter, the survivors. There is no ceremony attached to this. No one marks it. But when you look around the settlement in December of 1621, you can tell by the way someone moves, by the way they stack wood and bank a fire and look at the sky before they plan their morning, who was here last winter and who came on the fortune. You were here. The Brewster household in December. William Brewster reads by firelight in the evenings, a book he has read before, turning the pages carefully because books do not get replaced here. Love Brewster, his son, who came over on the Mayflower, is 15 now and does the heavier work around the house. Wrestling Brewster, his other son, also 15, twins, does the same. You make their suppers and tend their fire and mend their clothes and exist in the margins of their household with the quiet attention you have been practicing since you arrived. Brewster says please and thank you. This has not changed. The world has changed considerably around this small constancy, and the small constancy matters more for the contrast. In the evenings in December, you sometimes sit near the Brewster fire after the household is asleep, not because you are not tired, but because the fire is there and the quiet is there, and there are a few minutes between the end of the work and the beginning of sleep that belong to no one in particular. You sit with your hands in your lap and look at the fire. The fire does what fires do. It moves, it breathes, it diminishes and revives when you feed it. You have fed so many fires, you will feed more. You think about England sometimes, in these minutes, not with longing exactly. Longing is for things that are still possible, and England is far enough and far enough gone that it sits in a different category, more like a place that existed, where a person who was you also existed, and both of them, the place and the person, are still real but are not what is in front of you. What is in front of you is the fire, and the Brewster house, and the settlement street, and the cornfield empty now, its stalks cut down to the ground, the mounds still visible under the December frost if you know where to look, and the spring path, and the well, and Coles Hill above the settlement, where the graves are, smoothed over and planted now, grass coming up through them in summer, dormant in winter, returning in spring. You know all of it. Every path, every building, every face in the colony, the original 51 and the 35 who came after. You know their names and their conditions, and who sleeps near the fire, and who sleeps near the wall, and who coughs in the mornings, and whose cough is the kind to watch. This place is inside you now, not the place you came from, not the place you planned, but the place you know. January will come, then February. Then the light will begin to return, 1 minute at a time, and the ground will soften at the edges of the path, and the alewives will run in the brook, and you will plant corn again, 2 fingers deep, 5 seeds to a mound, fish in the ground below them, and the corn will grow, because you know how to make it grow, because Squanto showed the men and the men showed each other and you watched. The Fortune left Plymouth on the 13th of December, carrying back to England the first cargo the settlement has produced, beaver skins and clapboard timber, worth approximately £500. The merchant adventurers in London will be expecting this cargo. The cargo will not arrive. French privateers will take the fortune in the English Channel, and the cargo will be lost, and the debt the colony owes to the merchant adventurers will remain. This has not happened yet. The fortune is still at sea, somewhere in the Atlantic, carrying what this place has managed to produce in its first year. It is enough. It is something. A beginning, not a settlement yet, but the direction of one. You are the direction of one. You bank the fire for the night. The embers will hold until morning. You have banked enough fires now that your hands know the correct distribution of ash without your mind having to think about it. The right amount. Enough to preserve, not so much that it smothers. You lie down. The Brewster house is quiet. Outside the bay is dark, and the settlement is dark, and Coles Hill is dark, and the forest beyond the settlement is dark. The same dark it was on the night you first stepped off the longboat onto the gravel beach and felt the ground not moving and did not know yet what that meant. You know now. You know what this ground is. You know what it cost. You know what it gives. The cold comes through the northeast corner of the wall, the place it always comes, and you have already put an extra blanket there, and it is enough. It is the right amount. The cold is manageable. The fire holds. The night is long. You are still here. You close your eyes. Good night. If this story stayed with you, a subscribe or a like helps more than you might think. Sleep well. There is a way that December nights in Plymouth sound different from the nights of any other month. January nights have the sound of wind, the sustained, purposeful wind of deep winter, the wind that has made up its mind and is not reconsidering. February nights have the same wind, plus the creak of frozen wood in the walls, the building itself contracting in the cold. March nights begin to have the sound of water, ice releasing at the edges of the brook, the first drip of melt from the roof during the day that refreezes at night with a specific click. December nights sound like something that has not yet committed. The cold is real, but it is still arriving. The wind is real, but it has not settled into its January purpose. The building breathes in December rather than contracting. You can hear it breathe, a slight give and take of the timbers as the temperature moves through the walls, and it sounds like the building is still deciding what it is. You have been here long enough to know the difference. A year of nights, one after another, and each month with its own sound. And now December again, and the sound of it is familiar in the way the path to the spring is familiar. Not comfortable exactly, but known. Outside the Brewster house, the settlement street is quiet. The new people from the Fortune are in their temporary arrangements, distributed across the existing houses, learning the same things you learned a year ago, making the same mistakes, discovering the same rules. The fire must be banked this way. The water must be fetched before the path freezes. The blanket must cover the feet or the feet go numb. Some of them are learning quickly. Martha Ford is learning quickly. She has the quality you have seen in the people who survive. Not toughness in the way that word is usually meant, not the refusal to feel things, but a kind of pragmatic continuity. The ability to do what the next hour requires regardless of what the previous hour cost. Thomas Parents is learning quickly too. He is 21 and he arrived without useful skills for this place. He is a carriage maker by trade. and there are no carriages at Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1621, and he has had to build a different relationship with usefulness from nothing. He does it without complaint. You have noticed this. He is in the wood-cutting rotation now, going out with Standish's group in the mornings to cut timber for the new structures planned for spring. Usefulness is the currency here. You have always known this, but watching the newcomers discover it, you see it from the outside for the first time, the way you cannot see the shape of a place until you have left it and turned back to look. This is what Plymouth teaches everyone eventually, that the distance between survival and not surviving is mostly a matter of what you are willing to do and how quickly you are willing to learn to do it. The place does not adjust itself to the people. The people adjust to the place. You have adjusted. You are adjusted. Plymouth is in you now the way the ship's motion was in you when you first stepped off onto the beach, in your legs, in your balance, in the way you move through the world. You do not feel it as you do it. It is just how you move. The Brewster fire is low. You get up, quietly, no one else is awake, and add a piece of oak and a piece of pine. Oak for the long burn, pine to bring the heat back up quickly. You stand near the fire for a moment while the new wood catches, warming your hands. 60 years old, William Brewster sleeps in his small room at the back of the house. He came from Scrooby in Nottinghamshire, where his father was the postmaster, and he has been an elder of this congregation since before you were born, and he has walked from Nottinghamshire to Leiden in the Netherlands to Plymouth, Massachusetts, in the course of one lifetime, guided always by a conviction about where God requires him to be. You do not share his conviction. You have never shared it, but you have lived beside it for a year, and you know what it produces in a person, a groundedness, a willingness to accept difficulty without blaming it on the wrong cause. He does not blame the cold on God. He does not blame the dying on God. He takes the cold as the cold and the dying as the dying, and does what the morning requires. This is not so different in practice from what you do. The fire is good now. You go back to your pallet and lie down and pull the blanket up. Through the wall of the Brewster house you can hear, very faintly, the sound of the bay. You could not hear the bay in January. The wind was too loud. In December you can hear it, when the night is still. A low, sustained sound at the edge of hearing, not quite water and not quite wind, the sound of a large body of water existing in the cold. You have been listening to that sound for a year. It was the last thing you heard before you fell asleep on the Mayflower, the water against the hull. It was the sound that was there all winter while you carried water and tended the sick. It was there in spring when you planted, and in summer when you watched the corn grow, and in October when Massasoit's 90 men came out of the trees and you stood at the cooking fire and fed everyone. The bay is always there. It was here before the Patuxent village. It was here when the first Wampanoag people came to this coast, following the ice back as the glaciers retreated 12,000 years ago. It will be here after the corn is harvested, and after the fortune is captured by privateers, and after the merchant adventurers lose their patience, and after all of it, whatever all of it turns out to be. You are here now. That is the fact of the present moment. The bay sound, and the fire, and the December night, and the weight of 2 blankets, and the cold in the northeast corner, held back by the extra thickness you put there. You know what you know. The path to the spring, the weight of the firewood, the sound of a cough that is getting worse, the way seeds go into the ground, the way the light comes back in February, 1 minute at a time, climbing so slowly you could miss it if you were not paying attention. You have been paying attention. You have been paying attention since the gravel beach in November, since the first walk up the path with the water bucket, since the first morning you woke up on the frozen earth of the common house and lay still for a moment before getting up, because getting up was the next thing, and there was always a next thing. There is always a next thing. There will be a next thing tomorrow. The fire will need feeding. The water will need fetching. The new people will need to be shown something. The children will need to be fed. The corn in the storehouse will need to be measured and accounted for so that it lasts through to spring. You will do these things not because you were asked and not because you were not asked, but because you are the person who does them, because you have become that person here in this place in this year, because the place made you into someone who knows how. This is not the life you were sent for. You were sent to be useful in someone else's household. 7 years and then done. Then back to whatever was left of the life before. That plan belongs to a world that did not survive contact with the Atlantic, with the 'tween deck, with the first winter, with Coles Hill, and the graves, and the corn, and the treaty, and the celebration, and the fortune, and all of it. This is the life you are in. You are in it the way you are in the cold. Not because you chose it, but because here you are, and here the cold is, and you have learned to be warm enough. The fire holds through the night. You made sure of it. The bay sounds far below. The settlement breathes around you in the dark. Somewhere on Coles Hill, the grass is dormant over the graves, waiting for spring. You are still here. The night is long. Let it be long. You have slept through longer ones, and woken, and begun again. Close your eyes. Let this voice carry you somewhere far from the cold, far from the water, far from everything that this year asked of you. You have carried enough. You have carried so much. Rest now. Good night. If this story found you at the right moment, a subscribe or a like means this work can continue. Sleep well wherever you are.